Hello everyone, welcome again to a new lesson on classroom management. In today's lesson, we will be focusing on two authors, Edmund Emmer and Caroline Everson. And these two authors worked on a book called Classroom Management for Middle and High School Teachers. Along this lesson, I will be highlighting probably some important or relevant aspects that probably are related to classroom management, and especially in this part where we are at this moment of the semester. Um, Probably we won't be covering the whole book, but probably the two first chapters, chapter 1, chapter 2, and we will stop at a point where we will continue the like getting in touch with the information, but in a different way in the class. So let's start with chapter number 1. As you can see, probably the book is divided into chapters, and the idea is to, as I told you before, highlight the most relevant aspects that I consider you should actually um, be related to. First of all, we will be talking about organizing your classroom and materials. Although it seems to be a silly aspect, right? It is important when we are assigned uh, in a school to be, for example, homeroom teachers who are in charge of a group of students, and they probably um you're expected um, to support that classroom most of the time, right? And you're not going to teach only English, but also accompany the students in different aspects. So when we are assigned that responsibility, so some other responsibilities, some other actions come up with that assignment. For example, like organizing the classroom, right? Even though in public schools, in the public field, we have not too many resources as we have in the private school. The idea is to maintain, to keep classroom organized, and that's going to help us control discipline, control students' behavior, and to create a good environment. Um, the idea is to have all the high traffic areas free of congestion, right? So students, for example, don't fall, so they don't have like some distractions on their side, and something they may use to get distracted with, So get all the areas free of materials, free of tape recorder, free of anything that actually may get your students uh, misbehaving in the class. Make sure your students easily see the teacher, not only you but other teachers, right? And that is something really important because we as teachers need to have all the classroom view clear, so we get to know what's happening in every angle of the classroom. Okay. Um, Materials and supplies, those that we use and probably other teachers use in the classroom, need to be accessible for all of them. Okay, accessible, but they should not be in the middle of their students' way. Okay. Um, and another aspect that we need to take into account in terms of organization in the classroom is that students easily see the board. Okay, once the students are, I mean, they cannot see what's happening on the board, what the teacher is writing on the board. We may get in trouble, and discipline is going to ruin your class because they will start complaining. Teacher, I can see. Teacher, can you move? Teacher, the light. Teacher, the board is shining. Teacher, like, so the idea is to avoid those disruptions in the class, so you maintain a good environment and an environment for learning. Following this organizing your classroom and materials title, another suggestion for organizing your classroom is to create bulletin boards or bulletin walls inside the class. Uh, Actually, if you're the English teacher and you're in charge of the class, it will be a good idea to have this bulletin board or the bulletin wall in English, right? I think it will be a good motivation for them, actually, to inspire them, to provoke creativity, to have teamwork, and to create, awareness on the things that they have inside the classroom. Besides, it's gonna be a spot for them to get informed, for them to probably post the assignments that they have for the week, probably the awards that you have in terms of discipline and and behavior within the class, or any other information that you consider important for them to have visible and clear and close to them. Um, Here it says, for example, ninth grade and below, post rules of the classroom. Why ninth grade and below? Because probably in 10th and 11th and probably other grades, depending on the country, right? It's gonna be probably more like a more higher level thing, and I don't think they will be like into designing the rules, into probably they're a little bit mature, and the information in terms of the rules or norms probably it's gonna be easily understood, right? um, However, from ninth grade and below, it's a good idea to work on the rules, right, that they consider they should follow within the classroom, right, and post the rules in a visible place inside the class. So that's a good idea. That's a good tip to consider. It depends on the context, and it depends also on the students that you will be working with. In the bulletin board, you can also post as a reward the class of the month, or the students of the month, or probably the students who worked really well along the week, or the students who are behaving really good, right? So then it becomes more like a stimulus for them to be posted in the bulletin board. Um, Probably another tip that we can highlight from this information, this chapter, is that the teacher's desk, right, and teacher's equipment should be something really that they need to respect in the class, right? And when I refer to the desk, I mean, we should like teach students, right, that the teacher's desk is like a really important thing in the classroom, right? Because sometimes we get to classrooms and students are sitting on the desk, on the teacher's desk, and that means that probably you have no authority, that probably, like they do not consider you are as important as you are pretending to be. Once they know that's the teacher's desk, they know there is an authority in the classroom, with the teacher or without the teacher. And probably in terms of organization in the classroom, storing space and supplies, like having all the posters if you have them, flashcards, for example, your tape recorder, all the materials you have for working with the students, like everything organized. So as I told you before, we have no disruptions in the middle of your English class or in a different class. Here we have something really interesting that probably English teachers suffer a lot, and it's the fact of floating. And it will be interesting for you because I'm really sure this is a new word for you, float, right? Float, referring to uh, what English teachers do, right? Like jumping from one class to the other one because we need to go to different classes to teach different students, right? So we go, probably if we're teaching in third grade, so we go to third grade A, third grade B, and C and D, and probably we move to second grade or to fourth, right? So that's what they call floating. So since we have to work on that, so we have to do that, right? We have to float from one class to the other one because we are English teachers, and you will be working as English teachers. We need to familiarize with the room, with the classroom. We will be working, especially the first week, especially the first month, especially the first days, right? So it's a good idea not to get late to that class or not to get confused with the classrooms. Um, it says here, try to arrange a projector for daily use. That's something that I consider really optional, right? It depends on the materials that you and the resources that you will be using in your class. It says here that we should leave a space, a regular space or like a spot on the board, so we can write daily the assignments that they have. And we should have a student doing that, or we should do it ourselves. And that is a good experience to do. That is something that we should actually work on. Then we need to, well, try to get a card. I don't think so, depending on the staff that you need to carry on. Assign early arriving students the task of preparing the room. Well, I consider all the students in the class should have a responsibility. Probably 1 week or 1 month, and a row. They need to keep the classroom clean, or they need to make sure that the classroom is clean. And probably the other ones are working on the materials, and the other ones are working, on in I don't know, different responsibilities that you may assign within the classroom. Then we continue talking about choosing rules and procedures in chapter number 2. And here, probably some of the ideas that we have mentioned before when we refer to the 10 tips, when we read the material from Penny R, right? And probably some other tips that we have been talking about along the semester. Here we also see some of them reflected. For example, rules identify general expectations or standards. Best when positively stated. You may talk when given permission. It is always is going to be a great idea to set the rules in the beginning of the year, to set the rules in the beginning of the course, to set the rules in the beginning of your class. Okay, probably in the first classes, to remind the norms, to remind the rules every time you have to. Okay, so you don't waste the whole year like talking about that, but probably a good time in the beginning of the year. Um, Communicate the expectations in terms of behavior, right? What do you expect from your students, and probably what they expect from you, and that will be like a good time for the whole class and you to have a good communication, and probably they have clear the behavior you expect from them, and probably the actions in terms of behavior or discipline that you expect from them. And then we have planning, classroom rules and procedures, right? And also consequences, right? Or consequences. Here we have identify school rules and procedures. Actually, that is something that probably is already stated in schools, in the students' handbook or Manual de Convivencia, right? And probably we just need to focus on that, work on that, like, I don't know, make students feel aware about the norms of the school, the rules of the school, and probably that they respect not only you but also each other, right? Based on the students' handbook that the school has. It says here around 5 sufficient to cover most behavior, right? Like here there are like 5 tips. Bring all needed materials to class. Be in your seat and ready to work when the bell rings. And these are like probably some really common rules that students need to follow, but probably most of them are included in the student's handbook. Respect and be polite to all people. Respect other people's property and obey all school rules. Um, and as I told you before, you can actually in the beginning of the year work on a decalogue, right, of the rules that you consider and that they actually consider they need to follow within the English class, for example, and they probably post those rules in English, and they feel familiarized with the rules that they actually chose for them to behave in your class. Then we have here like general procedures. For example, in the beginning of period, in the beginning of your class, okay, attendance. They consider these two authors consider the attendance is really important, and actually, it's a good idea because in the beginning of the class you make sure who's not in the class, who is in the class, probably those students who are not, what are the reasons they are not in your class, probably because they are sick, because they didn't come to school, or because they are not simply in the class. Okay, so it's a good idea to get to know who's in your class, what students are not. So actually, you can activate probably other actions with the discipline coordinators, or with the principal, or with the academic coordinator, or with any other colleague within the school. The attendance, we don't need to call on all students, right? We just need to follow, for example, we should identify the empty seats, and probably we can ask students who's not here, who's sitting there, so we can identify easily, and do not waste a lot of time, or plenty of time, like calling on probably the 35 or the 40 students that you have in your class. It's a good idea also to to have a very good control of the absences. It says here write name and date on handouts, and keep in absentee folder, right? Daily assignments on calendar, and students volunteers to assist returning students, and like all the responsibilities they have, like to have them clear on a paper, on a folder, so you can control their responsibility in terms of attendance, or any other responsibilities they have with you in terms of classroom management. Third students, those students who get late to class, right? And I would like you to include in your reflection that you have to actually upload in Cynthia this week. Guys, I have a question for you. What would you do, or what do you consider it's a good strategy to do with those students who get late to your class? What happens if one of your students, even in primary, even in high school, it turns a little bit difficult, right? Because it's really common this to happen. What happens? What would you do? What strategies would you implement? What stimulus? What I don't know. What actions, right? Would you carry it out when one of your students get late to your class? And this is what they call third students, those who are uh, like always, not on time, or getting late to your class. So what would you do? I would like to read those strategies, or that strategy, in your reflection. Or what do you think it could be a good idea, right? According to what you have learned so far, or what you consider, or those who already have experience on teaching, what would you do, or what do you do to control this? Um, what is the expected behavior? So we can have warm-up questions at the beginning of the class, right? Copy outline of class activities and diagnostics. This outline of the class activities is really good, and it's a very good practice to have clear like to show students and to make the learners clear what are they going to do today in class. Okay, so you can actually write on a corner of the board, number one, warm-up activity, number two, working in groups about the topic that you're working with them. Activity number three, probably evaluating the activity. The moment number four in the class, organizing the classroom, right? So probably they know what they are going to do, so they have like an order in their minds about what's going on, what's going to happen, and probably that's going to help you control discipline. That's going to help you because so when they don't know what they are going to do, that their expectations, their emotions may be altered at some point of the class. And then we have here leaving the room only for emergencies, keeping a record of those who leave the class, and reduce credit for work not brought to class. Okay, this is something that we should manage depending on the school policies, right? What happens with those students who do not respond with the assignments, or those who get late to class? Sometimes it is in the student's handbook, or like some specific situations that probably occur daily in the classroom. You have clear what to do, and they know also what to do, or what's going to happen, what are the consequences on doing something or behaving in a certain way. And then we have here using materials and equipment. Well, that's also depending on the context that you're working with. And at the end of the class, clean up for materials and reminders of upcoming work. Remember that we also create a good environment when we leave the class. If we have to float, if we need to move from one class to the other one, probably it's a good idea to leave the class neat and clean, and not to leave a mess to our colleague or to another teacher, right? Because probably discipline is going to be the king of the class or the queen of the class in that next lesson. Great, and here we have another procedures during seat work and instructions. Here we have two good aspects that we actually consider important: respect and note taking, right? respecting other partners or classmates participation and note taking. Probably it's important, right? Because that keeps students connected to the class, that keeps students focused on what they have to do, on probably the information that you're providing with them, and to set the rules of the game, not also in the beginning of the year, but in the beginning of every activity. Because, like English teachers, we're always bringing different activities to the class. So if you're going out of the class, that you set the rules if we need to move out of the class. If we are going to the computer lab, what are the rules for going there, right? And every activity that you have, different from probably working on the books or working in the class, that you should actually set the rules of the game. You need to uh, agree with the students what are the ways they should or they have for participating in your class. Okay, they raise their hand, they ring a bell, they run to you, they I don't know, they make an applause, I don't know, whatever the strategy you consider for them to participate. But remember that all these strategies need to be peaceful and needs to be like not like um, those strategies that generates more disruptions in the class. And then we have in terms of the seat work, we have talk among students. This is really important, guys. Not to stay sitting the whole class, the whole hour, the 2 hours in a chair, in the teacher's chair, on the teacher's seat, but also or especially moving from one side to the other one. So the students see you, first of all, close to you. Second of all, that they know and you know what they are doing and what are you doing, right? Because sometimes it's like the teacher over there and the students over here, like like creating our a distance between students teacher, and I don't think that's a good idea in terms of the discipline. So when we walk around the classroom, we get to know the students, we get to know their names, we get to know what they are doing, we get to know actually who's working and who's not, who's having problems, who did not understand the instructions, and things like that, right? Um, Probably that you assigned a like a symbol strategy, an action for them to ask for help, not also for participating for all, but also asking for help, right? And not like everyone, teacher come here, teacher come here, and they get you crazy because all of them are calling you at the same time. um, what they should do in terms of activities that or actions that requires them to get them out of their seat work, right? Like getting paper, throwing garbage on the waste basket, right? Or things like that, like going to the bathroom. You need to have an agreement with them on when they should do that, how they should do it, what do they need to do, what do they need to say, right? But remember, if you're working with kids and they need to go to the bathroom, you need to be really careful with that. If they do not how to say it in English and it's an emergency, you need to leave them go. I mean, you need to allow them to go to the bathroom because you may have an accident in the classroom. I don't think you want that, and you don't want their parents to be on the top of your head. And then we have what happens when the work is completed, right? Teacher, I'm done, teacher, I'm done, teacher, I'm done, and probably they start bothering our students and bothering their closer friends, and they do not allow their classmates to finish what they are doing or to concentrate on the activity that they are doing. So please make sure you have rules for these moments of the class. And we're almost done. We're going to finish here in chapter number 2, but talking about something that probably at some point calls our attention, and probably we do it like, okay, let's work in groups. Sometimes we need to work in groups because we consider that's a good strategy for controlling the discipline, right? Because they get together and they probably get a little bit calmer, or probably they get more relaxed. But when we work in groups, there is something that we should follow. We need to have clear what is the purpose of working in groups, what is the objective, right, that we have with the activity in groups that we have planned. Besides, we need to know as future English teachers that there is a theory on working in groups, and that is something that we will be um, like studying in deep. Actually, that's going to be the next part of the lesson, and that I will be talking about that probably in a different moment. But the idea is that we are aware that working in groups is something that requires, first of all, that we teachers get to know the theory, also that students identify also what is their roles, right, within the group they are working with. What is the purpose? What do they need to achieve? What do they want to achieve by the group, or with the group they are working with? So it says here, for example, assigning students to groups will balance, separate class, save time, efficient, and this is something that probably are characteristics of any of the approaches that we may have for working in groups. So I will stop here because probably this is something that we need to study more in deep, and this is something that you will be working in groups probably for next lesson, right, on presentations, and I will be actually in a different moment talking about this. But up to here, I hope I could um, actually giving you like a broader idea, like much more tips about classroom management, and that these two authors, together with the information that I have actually gained in my experience, are day by day like constructing and building all the strategies, all the decisions that you need to make in a classroom. And this information is valid. This information is going to help you, I'm sure, a lot, right, in the future, when you remind all these tips, all this information given not only by me as your professor, but also for these authors in this case. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for watching this tutorial video, and I hope you enjoy working on your reflection, which is the assignment that we have at the end, after listening or watching this tutorial video. Remember, you need to upload your reflection on the platform, and there is like some criteria that you need to follow, some instructions that you need to follow, and that are more specific in the platform. Thank you again, and have a good day.